Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We are here, second one of the year, Steve. Here as always with my co-host and Hall of Famer Steve Flink, and like we always say at the beginning of the year, love that pretty much right out of the chute we get our first Grand Slam. So the players, their teams, they better be ready because there's not a lot of play-in matches that you can have before it really counts, right, Steve?
No, it's pretty hard. We've talked about this before. Ideally, the Australian Open for fans, it's perfect. We jump right into the season. For players, ideally, it would be March. They'd have a couple of months of play, and then they build up for the Australian, and then they'd still have a few more months before the French. But they've never been able to make that happen. So be it. We have a treat in store over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we do. And just to timestamp this pod, it's what is it, Thursday afternoon, late afternoon in the States. The matches start, occurring depending on where you are geographically. They will start over the weekend. So there may be some, injury withdrawals or whatnot. We're just going to hit on some highlights, some potential or some interesting first round matchups, maybe some potential matchups going forward, but we'll try not to look too far ahead because we know so much tennis can happen. And Steve, you and I will do another like mid tournament review as well. So with that, the draw came out last night, late last night in the States. Anything before we kind of go into men's or women's side that really pops out at you?
This that the worst case scenario for the men did not happen, meaning we didn't get Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic all in the same half. We did get Djokovic and Alcaraz potentially in a quarterfinal, which is exciting in one way, but we'd lose one of the big names. One of them is not going to make the semifinals, which is too bad. That struck me, Sinner with a pretty good draw, and also that Naomi and excuse me, that Coco and Sabalenka on the same half, which I regret somewhat. I would have preferred they were on opposite halves because I think that could have been a great final. But those are the things that hit me off the top.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to think, when's the last time Novak's been the seventh seed in a slam, right? I mean, you got to go way back. So that's what happens when you don't get one of those top seeds. So, hey, for
But
tennis
also,
fans,
David, but also the other reason it's happening, it might not have happened, is that Carlos is the number 3 seed, which you
right.
wouldn't expect from a guy that won 2 slams last year. Excuse me, but he is. So just bad luck in a sense, but thankfully they're on the opposite half from Sinner because I would have hated to see the winner of Djokovic Alcaraz play Sinner in the semis,
Right.
and then who knows who comes through on the other side. So it's not a terribly unfair draw in that sense.
Yeah, so let's see how it develops here. All right, we can start with the men. A few first round matchups that stuck out at me. Matteo Berrettini plays Cam Norrie. Norrie almost got himself into a little bit of trouble a couple days ago with losing a racket in the stands, but that's a dangerous matchup for both those guys.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they're both trying to sort of reignite their careers in a sense and really move back to the top levels of the game. And yeah, a tough one to call. I think on recent form, I kind of like Berrettini.
And then another one that's kind of intriguing is for me is Stefanos Tsitsipas plays Mickelson. Mickelson did okay this current week. I think he lost in the semis to another young American, quarters or semis. I'm sorry, but Tsitsipas to me, there's question marks to see how his year is going to go in 2025. Can he get to another final of a slam, or can it be maybe this mid 5 to 10 to 15 ranking range? We'll see how this year goes for him.
No, it's shocking. I look down at that draw sheet and I see him seated 11. It really is shocking. I mean, you don't think of him. You think of him as somebody who should be consistently between, at the very least, between 5 and 8 in the world on ability. So this is going to be an important tournament. 2 years ago, he was in the finals here against Novak. It's been pretty rough for him since. And I don't know. I don't know whether he's ready to make a big move right now toward trying to reach a third Grand Slam final. I'm not seeing it, but I hate the idea. I don't like Tsitsipas being seeded 11. He's a better player than that.
Yeah, I would agree. Taylor Fritz, guy who's still, he's in great form. The end of 2024, he's still in good form now. You saw his performance in the United Cup, despite he lost one match, but he still played well in the United Cup. USA winning that event. He plays Jensen Brooksby, and we have not seen Jensen Brooksby play in really a couple of years now. You know the unorthodox style of Jensen. He can give players problems. That said, just because you really don't, you haven't seen him in a couple of years, I think Taylor will get through that one.
Oh yeah, I absolutely do. In fact, I'd be surprised if he didn't win in straight sets, given how long Brooksby's been gone. But and Taylor's a pro; he won't take that match for granted. He'll treat it seriously. So, but it'll be intriguing. I hope it's competitive, but I think Fritz surely wins.
Sticking with Taylor a little bit, he's got some dangerous players on his side of the draw. He may have to play Pericard, who plays Monfils right now. Monfils had a good week, but Pericard, Fritz may have to play Pericard in the third, and maybe Ben Shelton if Ben gets, wins a few matches on his side. He plays Nakashima in the first round, but Taylor may have to beat Pericard in the third round and Shelton in the fourth round. Those are just dangerous type of players, especially a guy like Pericard. You're not going to get much rhythm in that match.
No, not at all. And I mean, he's the kind of guy. If you get in a five setter with him, you might be looking at 50 aces, and Taylor understands that. And so, in turn, it would put a lot of pressure on him to keep holding his own. So that would be an interesting match. I still think he's such a tough competitor, and so he's improved so much in the last year. I still would like his chances to win, but it could be a really kind of a harrowing skirmish, is how I'd put it. But I like him to win.
So the last match I want to get your opinion on before we get to the bottom half of the men is Andre Rublev versus Fonseca. Now Fonseca, David Zakoden in our year-end talked very highly about him. We know this guy can play. He's very good. That's a dangerous first-round match for Andre Rublev. Again, with Rublev, sometimes don't know his mood, his temperament on court, and if Fonseca can get on top of him early, you don't know how Andre's going to react in that one.
I don't like the format in the next gen finals, but he won it. He's impressive. He's not afraid of anybody. He's very determined. Rublev coming off a very uneven 2024 campaign. There's a potential for an upset there. I certainly think it's going to be very close one way or another, but I'd almost call that 50-50 going in.
I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 5 sets.
Not at all. I mean, maybe you make Rublev a 51-49 favorite based on experience, but boy, he better be on top of his game.
Yeah, I agree. Bottom half, you talked about how Alcaraz and Novak can play in the quarter, Novak being the 7th seed, Alcaraz being the 3rd seed. Looking at Novak's draw, he may play Riley Opelka in the 3rd round of a rematch that just occurred with Opelka beating Novak again. I think that speaks more of Riley coming back than it does of Novak's form. This is a different deal. It's a slam. It's going to be 3 out of 5. I would expect if they match up Novak to get through that one. But again, Opelka knows what he needs to do to beat Novak. Now, that doesn't mean he can execute it. It's just serve big and any early opportunity in a point, go big. And that's what he did. And his ground strokes held up in that. Now, again.
Well, they more than I'm sorry to interrupt. They more than held up. That was the part of that match that I couldn't believe was how great his ground game was. I have a hard time seeing him replicate that over best of 5. Right. You're right. It's exactly how he's going to approach the match. The other thing we have to wonder, though, does Riley, after he beat Novak, he had an injury, wrist problem in the semi, still got through it, and then retired in the final at 4-1 down in the first set with a back issue. So is he going to be really 100% in both of those areas and able to win 2 matches to get to Novak here? There's that question as well.
Yep. We'll see if that matchup comes up in the 3rd round. Interesting one. Fabio Fognini. We haven't really seen much of him lately. He plays Grigor Dimitrov. Dimitrov's been in really good form for him, but he retired recently with an injury. Now, again, some of these retirements may be real minor nicks and players just don't want to take chances before the first slam of the year. We don't know. Hopefully Grigor's okay and playing up to his standard. I'd like Grigor in that match, but as we all know, Fognini, if he gets on fire, he can be lights out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we haven't seen that from him in a considerable amount of time. It would be a question of sort of reawakening for him, but it's just the kind of situation and scene that he likes. A big match against a big player, maybe on a show court, but that sort of brings out the best in Fognini. But hopefully, Grigor's was just sort of a niggling minor problem. If that's the case, Grigor in 3 or 4, the way I see it. Probably 4.
I see an enticing second round matchup. I hope this happens for all tennis fans, but Tanasi Kokonakis can play Jack Draper in the second round, Steve. And I mean, Jack Draper, we've talked about, he may have a monster 2025 year. But with Kokonakis playing in his home country in Australia, the crowd's going to be behind him. That's going to be an entertaining second round match if it happens.
Oh, it would be. It would be. I feel like if Draper doesn't get tight, I still like his chances with the left-handed serve and the tricky spins, and that might make life a little uncomfortable for Kokonakis. But those crowds, anytime Kokonakis plays in front of Australian Open crowds, it's like he's a 37% better player. So I don't take him lightly in those circumstances.
Well said. Also noticed an interesting first round. FAA, Felix Auger-Aliassime plays Jan Lennard Struff. Struff's a big player. When he's playing well, he's dangerous. I don't think that's going to be a routine win for FAA if he gets through. I think that's going to be a close one.
Yeah, maybe Struff was playing a bit better a year or two ago, but yeah, I agree. I agree. And with his serve and everything, FAA seems to be coming around as we speak, and he's having a good tournament this week. I feel like I like him, but not by heavy odds.
Looked at Tommy Paul's draw, and it seems pretty good for Tommy. He hasn't played much. He just got to Australia this week. But I like his draw. There's a potential. Again, we're looking kind of a way ahead, and we'll see where we're at the next time we do this. But he could play Casper Ruud in a potential fourth round matchup. That's not a terrible matchup for Tommy. I'd like I'd like Tommy just to make another run in Australia. May not match what his semifinal run where he had, in the past in Australia, but I'd like to see Tommy do well here again.
Yeah, so would I. So would I. I mean, listen, Ruud's in the same. You mentioned Ruud, and he's in the quarterfinal bracket. He's due to play Zverev in the quarters, but
Yep.
Tom landed in a pretty good, comfortable part of the draw, all things considered. Could have done a lot worse, and it maybe he can rekindle the memories of a couple of years ago when he lost to Novak in the semi. So I'll be watching him closely.
Another one again. Who knows if it happens? And Kyrgios, is a little injured too, and he's coming back from a few big time injuries, so he hasn't played much. But a potential third round matchup with Sasha Zverev and Nick Kyrgios. So if that happens, wow. But
Well, you saw that, David. You saw that Nick. I mean, he was due to practice. I looked at the practice schedule for today or tomorrow. They list them. They send them to us in these emails every day, and he's down on the practice schedule, which was good news, I thought, because he was supposed to play Novak in an EXO and decided not to because of some kind of an abdominal injury. When you take that on top of recovering from the wrist, it's a little worrisome. But the fact that he's down to practice tells me that things can't be that dire. If he's healthy, it could be a little scary for Zverev, but I hope we get to see it. I would think if we do get the match, Zverev probably wins in 4 hard-fought sets, but let's hope we get it.
yeah, let's hope we get it. And the whole thing with Nick is too with those big matches. Sometimes he gets really up for it, and then his body just breaks down after, and he may not even be able to play the next match. So let's just see how that one pans out. Before we talk about some of the women's matches, anything on the men's side we haven't hit on that you want to address?
No, I think you did a nice, thorough job of leading us into those various intriguing early round matches, and we've sort of gone over the pattern of the draw. That the Carlos Novak quarterfinal will be so enticing, and Sinner seemingly. I would say about Sinner, I would only say this: he plays Nicholas Jarry first. That could be tricky, but assuming that he gets through that, which I believe he will, he's got a very nice draw. He should be happy. It isn't just that Novak and Carlos on the other side. It's his passage all the way through. It's hard to imagine he could lose before the semis.
Yeah, and for the listeners, Steve and I will get more in depth in the later rounds when we do this mid tournament. We just don't like to project so much and go deep into matches that may not happen. So that's why Steve and I are kind of doing some quick hitters with this. So just hang in with us. So on the women's side, you talked about Coco and Sabalenka being on the same side of the draw. Yeah, they won't play in the final. That said, they played in the semis last year. That said, I feel like Coco has always drawn Iga on her side of the draw in a number of majors. So it'll be nice that they're different, even though Coco's won the last two against Iga after having that horrible record against her. Um, so Coco seemed to be playing in good form. She plays Sophia Kenin in the first round. And you remember this was in 2023, the Wimbledon first round match, where Coco really was at, I don't want to say a fork in the road, but she was at a low point and had to address certain things. That's when she, got Brad Gilbert on the team and some others, and she went on her 2023 run. And we all know that, she wound up winning that. She had an amazing summer, winning the Open that year. Coco's playing in a different place right now. I expect her to beat Kenin, although Kenin can be dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. No, I mean, I think at this point, Coco is played so well post U.S. Open, where she had lost to Navarro for the second straight major, and she was really down on herself. And then she parted ways with Brad Gilbert. But ever since, she's been really first rate. So I just don't think she's going to panic about that particular match. The other thing about her and Sabalenka, you started with that fact that they're in the same half, and we talked about that. Of course, that was the semi a year ago, and Coco served for the first set, had 6-5 30 love, and lost the set and lost the match. But she's playing much better now than she was then. Sabalenka is also playing great. Let's hope they both get through to have that enticing semifinal with Iga trying to make her way through on the other half of the draw.
And from what you've seen of Coco since that U.S. Open, I mean, the serve, it's always the serve and forehand. Everything else is just, I mean, her athleticism is off the charts. Backhand's incredible. You're more comfortable with the consistency with the serve and the forehand from what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, it looks to me like the coach that replaced Brad Gilbert, Matt Daly. Daly seems to have addressed these areas, and he's changed. She's made a change in her service grip, as an example, and the forehand is much more solid. I feel like he's gone about it differently than Brad. I thought Brad did a fantastic job, but he had that great tactical mind, and it was more about tactics and strategy. And I get the feeling that Daly has gone about, has kind of addressed the mechanics, and that Coco's been a willing student. That's the feeling I get. So yes, I like the way she's playing, and hard to imagine that we don't see her at the very least in the latter stages. And frankly, I'm we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Just as a projection right now, I'd say that the winner. I like the winner of that potential semifinal to win the tournament.
Yeah. Yep. I think a lot of people will agree with that assessment. A rematch of last year's first round in the 2024 Australian Open. I have to get these years set. The years are just moving by, Steve.
Yeah.
Naomi Osaka and Caroline Garcia. Garcia won that in a pretty good match last year. They play again this year. What do you see in that one?
Well, Naomi was just in the finals, and it was looking like she was going to win a title for the first time in years, and she quit rather abruptly. It was her back. She didn't look frightened or teary or anything like that. That also looked a bit precautionary, like I better not mess with this. I'm feeling something. I don't, and so I feel like if that's put behind her and she's not worried about the back and that's cleared up, I really like her chances to beat Garcia this time. But it's a tough draw after that. We don't have to get into all the matches, but she would have a really rugged path, even if she wins that Garcia match. That's why it's so crucial that she win a few titles in there, go deep into some of these slams, and get that ranking back up there so that her draws improve.
Yeah. A match to me is a wild card. I have no idea. I don't bet, but if I did, I would have no idea which one to pick. Linda Bencic versus Ostapenko. I think I have no idea how that one's going to go. So I'm just going to ask you, what do you see on that one?
Yeah, I hate predicting the results of any Ostapenko match because she's very hard to figure. She's really ultra aggressive, and sometimes when she's on, she can be almost unstoppable. Then she can have days like she did against Coco at the U.S. Open a couple of years ago when Coco won in 23, where she's just eminently beatable.
It
So
was terrible that match. Yeah.
yeah, terrible. So I just feel like hard to gauge her. And Bencic's coming back. I'm not going to make. I'm going to beg off that call.
The last one I want to ask you about, and I wish this was in the third round, and maybe, in a couple of years, it'll be even in later rounds than this. This is in a first round match, and I'm really disappointed that they have to play in the first round, but I can't wait to see it. Is Emma Navarro versus Peyton Stearns. And, but people have listened to our podcast No, I'm very high on Peyton Stearns. I think she's very good, and I think she plays better in the bigger matches. It doesn't intimidate her. Emma Navarro just solid as she goes. I mean, so good. I think at this stage in her career, in both their careers, Navarro's just more solid, more consistent at this point. You know, if I had to predict, I'm thinking maybe 6-3, 6-3. Navarro. Peyton had some good results leading up. I love Peyton's game. She's nowhere near her ceiling, I think, Steve, but because they have to play each other in a couple days, I think Navarro wins in straight sets.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can see it maybe being a bit tighter, maybe one tight set in there, maybe a 7-5 or 7-6 set, possibly, but hard to envision Navarro losing that match.
But you like Peyton's game. I mean, you see a good
Oh, yeah,
upside for her, right?
I do. But again, she's up against such a seasoned competitor coming off a fantastic 2024 season. So I don't think she's. We'll see. She's played a lot of top players. She's not afraid of them, but I think Navarro is going to be just too polished for her.
Yeah. Let's talk about the U.S. men a little bit. We go back real quickly. I mean, Taylor Fritz is a fourth seed, Steve. That's pretty large. That's pretty big right there for Taylor. If he can play up to his seeding, that'd be huge. Is he your top guy as far as the Americans to do damage, or do you see anyone else? Maybe Tommy. We talked about Tommy a little bit.
Yeah, I
Haven't
mean,
talked about TFO.
yeah, I mean, Tommy could potentially, with a great, have a run to the semis again. Taylor, same thing. Taylor, all thing, potentially comes to the tough early round draw. We talked about Perry card, other potential pitfalls, but he might eventually play Medvedev in the quarters. But then there's Sinner's going to be waiting for me in the semis. That's the problem. So I mean, I just unless Sinner gets picked off, I don't see Taylor with a chance to make the finals. But a semifinal is not out of the question at all. And same for Tommy Paul on the other half.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time. I know this is kind of a little tricky because it's still so early. I mean, the first ball hasn't even been struck. We want to kind of talk about interesting first round matches. We talk about a few potential matchups that can occur, but the next time we talk, we'll be able to do a deeper dive, Steve, into some real good matches when you're talking about round of 16 quarters. I'm excited to see it. I think and maybe you'll agree with me on this one. This can be the most unpredictable slam because it's the first one out of the chute. You don't know who's really put in the hard yards training for this, who's ready for the heat. The heat can be stifling. Have not looked at the weather report, so I don't know what it's going to be like, but um, I'm not surprised if you get some crazy results in Australia just because, it's pretty much out of the chute in the new year.
Listen, they have to get over there. Their holidays are cut short. Maybe play one warm up event, one team event, whatever it might be. That's not a lot of preparation, and that's what does make it such an unpredictable environment, but it also makes it fun. And it's not as if we're not going to see. You look at the recent trend, we're still seeing. Usually, the cream does still rise to the top. You just get a lot of surprises along the way.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Well, Steve, thank you for your time. And again, we'll do this. If something crazy happens in early rounds, we can do a quick pod as well for the listeners. But figure we'll do something over the weekend where we'll have a better idea of what's really going to happen and can talk about what could happen in the latter stages of the tournament.
Look forward to it, David. It'll be fun.